Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and we have a very special guest with us today, Mrs. Susan Leath. And welcome, Susan, to the Jewish View.
Great, thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Well, you're very special because you're the Bethlehem town historian.
That is correct, yeah.
And, well, I love history. Besides that the Chabad has just bought the Nathanial Adams House. So when I stopped someone in the street, they said, wow, you just bought that. That's the iconic building in the whole Bethlehem. So we wanted to bring you on the show. You know, before you tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, to be a historian, one thing I've found out is that New York state law that every town has to have a historian. I always thought, oh, it's a nice thing, Bethlehem had a historian, but it's really an obligation on the city.
Yeah, it's really an obligation. Yep, it's a New York state law passed in like 1919 that everyone has to have, every incorporated city, town, village has to have a historian.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm on a long line of historians
when did you
for
start?
Bethlehem. It'll be 10 years in September. So, my background is actually in anthropology, academically, and then museum studies. I was the director of a small museum in South Carolina. And then we moved up here for, my husband's work, and I got very involved with the Bethlehem Historical Association and was raising my family. And then I knew this opportunity came along to be town historian. I know the position was open, so I said, I'm ready. That's for me. I'm ready, yeah.
All right, well, we see if the camera could show that you already have written two books already. That's pretty good.
I know, that's, 10 years. That's pretty good. My first one is called Bethlehem, and it is mostly historic pictures with captions. And then my second one came out just about a year ago. And it's got more articles that I've written over the years, some of them for our town and some of them just, for interest that I enjoy. So I wrote the articles and put them all together in a book. And I should point out, if you purchase the books, they are, all of my royalties are donated to the Bethlehem Historical Association.
Very nice.
So, I like to support them. They're great.
Well, do you have an online or a place where
they are? You can get them.
My wife really loved it, and she bought it in a local bookstore.
Yep, you can get them at local bookstores. You can buy them at Town Hall. You can get them online at any of the online retailers. So they're published once by they're both the History Press, which is now Arcadia Publishing. They're one and the same. So.
Oh, so excellent. Now let's zoom into our building over here. There's a lot of history there.
There is.
People laugh because people from Europe. Oh, this place is 1,000 years.
I know, really.
Here for 200 years. Oh, it's so old over here. And they just laugh. That's almost recent history for Europe.
Old, yep.
But still, we're in America.
For us and for Bethlehem, it's a pretty old building. Not the oldest, but it's pretty old.
I really thought it was the oldest.
No, well, it's very old for Delmar. I think that building was 1836, 1838. Excellent. I have to check my dates. The oldest building in town, oldest home, is about 1725.
Really?
So that's
pre-revolutionary.
Pre-revolution, very Dutch, very old Dutch. A little house on Kriebel Road.
The people who settled Bethlehem were more Dutch people?
Primarily Dutch, yeah. The earliest settlers were in the 1630s, 1640s. So we have very early time frame. Yeah.
It's interesting. Even Ellesmere, which like Delmar, Ellesmere is the town. I once saw someone was in Netherlands, and they said Aalsmeer. Or something like that. Well, that's probably what we're the Ellesmere. That's probably really.
Well, I don't know. The name Ellesmere came much later.
Really?
Yeah, probably not till I'm going to say 1900, but you have to double check on that. But that name came along much later.
It's not a Dutch name.
We don't know. The rumor has it that it's named after a popular novel that was popular in the late 1800s, which is called Robert Elsmere.
I made
that's
the
story.
Destroyed my whole historical thesis over here.
Well, but I haven't heard that, so I'd have to look into that.
Maybe a little bit Dutch over here.
But
tell us about our building.
But your building is the old Adams House Hotel. And it was built by Nathanial Adams. Adams was kind of interesting. He was a chef in Albany at the White Pillars Hotel, and he saw an opportunity out here. Delaware Avenue was the Turnpike Road, and that started in about 1805, I think. and he saw opportunity out here because there was traffic along the road. So it was a stagecoach stop. The house.
Where were they going to New York City?
They were going out west. Out if you follow Delaware, out west of Schoharie Valley.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Schoharie Valley, and then into Albany. So farm traffic, the quarries. People would bring the loads of stone in.
There's quarries around there.
Yeah. Head out west in the escarpment. There's quarries. There's ones that are still active.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought I'd go to Maine for the summer.
No,
There's quarries.
no. You've heard of the Helderberg Bluestone? That's all. Yeah, local rock. Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So
I'm
anyway,
learning a lot over here.
I know.
You're very
I can go on and
educational.
on. So Nathaniel Adams and his wife Regina came out here from Albany, and they built the hotel to take advantage of the traffic, that was coming along on the road. And then, the hamlet starts developing in the area. He was the first postmaster in 1840, and at that time the little community became known as Adamsville. And it was named from him. Yep.
Because he owned most property? Or?
He owned a lot of property, around the hotel and then down near Normansville as well. He owned a lot of property, in the hundreds of acres of property. Yeah.
Kept on to it, he'd be rich today.
Well,
a few hundred years later.
Yeah, he did. He donated the property for Delmar Reformed Church, which is right across the street.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was him. Yeah. But he and Regina and his wife had, I think it was 6 kids.
Really?
Yeah, that they, they lived in the inn and, had.
Do they have any connection? Because, always interesting as a Jewish rabbi, you hear about older people. Well, where are their kids today? Sometimes you don't find them. It's always an interesting genealogy.
Yeah.
But 6 kids, you would think there's a lot of Adams around.
Yeah, there's a few Adams around. I personally know 2 people who are descended from various branches of Nathaniel and Regina Adams. Yep. So there's still a few of them around.
Yeah. You'd think there'd be a lot after 6
I know, you'd
kids,
think there'd be more.
years.
Yeah. And what's funny, I mentioned earlier, I don't have a picture of Nathaniel Adams or his wife. I don't have a picture of them.
That'd be interesting. Because, if he was rich, obviously he had a lot of means.
Yeah.
Usually they take portraits of themselves.
Exactly. There's got to be one out there. I just haven't seen it. But I did bring along today, and I'm sure they'll show us some pictures of his son, who is John R. Adams, and his wife, Louise, and it's from about 1870.
Let me ask you, just from a history standpoint, how do you dig something like that up? Like that, you want to find a picture. How would you go about just even approaching the problem?
It depends. It's different angles. Do you know, like I'm on a show like this today. If you have a picture of Nathaniel Adams, I'd really like to see it.
Someone out there may have
someone might have something. Some are just random, like the picture of John Adams. I got an email that said, we picked up this book of old photographs years ago, and we think it might be your John Adams, and it was.
Really?
Yeah, so it's kind of a little randomness in it as well, so. It's kind of neat. The old newspapers are fascinating. You can get a lot of information from them. The old census reports, that kind of stuff.
Where all their kids and the descendants.
Yeah, they'll have some of that. Yeah. And Google is a wonderful thing.
Really?
It is. It is. And the other one is Google Books. It amazes me what books people have scanned over the years and they put up there online on the internet, and you can read these old books. Yeah, it's good stuff.
You have to know how to research. That's what I'm asking. Really, I guess it's a whole, learning. Learning. Angle how to research. Things.
Yeah, and the questions to ask. And to put the names in, and that kind of thing.
So let's get back. I love history.
I know, exactly.
I'm getting off on a tangent, but let's get back to the Adams building. So he built it. And
he built it.
It's a pretty big mansion.
It's a pretty big house. It was built as an inn or as a hotel, and it's that Greek Revival style.
Even with his 6 kids, and then he wanted other people in there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How do you like that? I knew it was an inn, but I thought maybe after the kids left, and then maybe it became an inn.
No, right. He raised the family there, right at the beginning, and... Yeah.
There's a lot of rooms there on the first floor. The second floor really has really a mass. When we moved in, we just bought it. Again, the Chabad, Bethlehem Chabad, the American Association for Retired Citizens had it, and they had a lot of cubicles, and it was it was a mess. It was beautiful, but we wanted it as a hall for our services and for our functions, social functions. So we just got everything out of there. But now it's a big hall.
Yeah, I was able to see it when you guys were open on New Year's Eve, and it's that big open room up there. And when I walked up, I thought, I bet this looks just like what it would have looked like when they had, they had dances there, they had political gatherings, they would have dinners. There was a time when people would come out from Albany. You could take a sleigh ride, and come out to the country, and maybe you'd stop there for dinner for the afternoon, and then go back into Albany. Yeah.
Was it in with like a restaurant too?
I believe so. Really? I'm not positive, but I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Now it's kosher over here. Everybody wants a kosher meal.
There you go, right?
It is really, my wife and I, when we're sitting there, I just, again, people know now that I love history. You're thinking, and, that they got, like I say, a lot of cubicles out, and they had this old chair, and I don't know if you're an antique dealer, but it says, I'm keeping that chair. And I don't know if it's Nathaniel Adams' chair or something, but
I doubt that.
It's a beautiful old...
Yeah, I doubt it because, the hotel was there till about 1920, and then the fire hall purchased it. The Delmar Fire Company purchased the building, so it was the Delmar Fire Hall for a number of years. And
where
then
would be the trucks?
They were in the back. Those,
really?
They put a big addition on the back with bays for the fire trucks. On the back of it. And that's why the fire company is still attached to your building. It's two separate buildings, I think, but they're still
really
there.
Flush.
Yeah. And then it was Town Hall from 1950 to 1980.
Where was it before the Town Hall?
Where was Town Hall?
Yeah.
That's a bit of a mystery. I've done some research on it. I don't have it, on the tip of my tongue but it was in a spot along Kenwood. They had some upstairs offices. And then for a number of years, it was in the offices of the town clerk. So whoever was town clerk had it in their offices.
The government today, and here's a building to say the whole government of Bethlehem should be in. It's a nice building, but on one hand, it's...
Yeah. Well, they did have auxiliary buildings when they were in your building.
Yeah.
When they were in the old Adams House, they had, there was a police building on Adams Street over there, so they had some kind of auxiliary buildings as well. They weren't all in there.
Everything contained in there.
Yeah. And then, 1980 or so, that's when they purchased the former Delmar School and moved down Delaware Avenue.
Yeah, there was a school. Now the town hall now was a school.
Was a school, that's the Delmar School. Delmar Grade School. Yep.
Everybody's moving up in there.
Yeah.
One of the recent people, like I say, Association for Retired Citizens, when did they take it over?
It was right about 1980.
Really?
Yeah.
So they've been there
They
for
renovated
about 30,
it. I believe so. Don't quote me on that, but yeah.
It's interesting because when Bethlehem Chabad, we were looking at it, was vacant for about a year. They moved out to the Association for Retired Citizens, moved to Leath. I guess people like, to us, it was great. It's in the center of town. It's perfect for us. You talk about finding something that's perfect or historic. We love it, but I guess people like modern. There's so much modern construction going on.
I am so glad that you guys moved in there to save and preserve the building, because how many uses are there for a building like that? So I'm very pleased that you're there.
Still needs a lot of renovation.
Taking care of it.
Stairs. And, in the hall. Any older building, I guess when it's new, you move right in. You don't have to think about it.
Exactly. But to have that historic presence and to have that, I think it's great. Yeah.
No, it's really, especially in the center. Well, you say that with the town supervisor, you want to say, well, we're making New Year's. That New Year's,
yes.
December 31st. He says, well, you're right there in the center of everything.
Exactly.
And, fireworks were right across the street.
Yep.
And it was like perfect for us because that's what, we want to be known in the community and good citizens. And we had like 750 people walk through.
It was crowded when I was there.
It was totally crowded.
It was very
we
crowded.
had food, of course.
Of course, that always helps, yes.
It helps the Jewish people, but I
helps everybody.
I know. Everybody loves a little bit of a donut or something.
Yeah.
Jewish food it was Hanukkah. It was so perfect. It was also the 8th night, the last night of Hanukkah.
Perfect.
So it was like for Jewish, for New Year's. It was just everybody
Everything
loved
aligned
it.
just right this year.
Everybody was right there.
Yeah.
So it really makes
Hope we
sense.
do it next year.
Well, Hanukkah won't be New Year's.
Well, no, but
we'll
still be New Year's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New Year's. So, Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we were talking about Nathanial Adams and how it was Adamsville for a long time.
I always hear his name. What's his little bio sketch?
Nathanial Adams, he's the guy he was a chef in Albany, and that was his thing. And I believe he farmed.
Over here?
No, I don't think he was so rich. I think he was making a living as the way he
acres,
could. He had the 100 acres and he farmed it, and then he was the postmaster.
I always thought he was a very big person because, this estate,
I guess it's all how you look at it.
Yeah.
I think he was,
land was cheap then also. And 100 acres, now 100 acres.
Yeah, land was cheaper then, I think, and and that's how he made his living. And the community came to be known as Adamsville, which is kind of neat. And then when the railroad came through in 1863, it was Adams Station for a long time, and then at some point the railroad changed it from Adams Station to Delmar Station. And there's actually a map from like 1890 that has both Adamsville and Delmar Station on the same map. And then eventually the Adamsville name kind of faded away and it became known as Delmar.
So that's the train route that's now the walking route?
The rail trail, yep.
Rail trail.
Yeah,
so that was a commuter, a passenger train?
Yep, although it wasn't built that way, which fascinates me because for our town, for Bethlehem, it was definitely, the importance is in that it was a commuter line.
Right.
But for the railroad folks, so this is the Albany-Susquehanna Railroad about 1863. They're looking at Albany, and then the railroad line goes out towards Binghamton, and it goes to Binghamton. And at Binghamton, they can connect with other lines to the coal that's in Pennsylvania. So they built the railroad line, they invested in it to bring coal.
How do you like that?
Yeah, from Pennsylvania to bring it to market in Albany. So that was what got them started. And then along the way, people went, oh, I can live out here in the country, and I can hop on the train and get into Albany very easily. So it's interesting.
There's something that I want you to research, because when obviously we walk through the beforehand in the basement, it's really nice in a way, not just a basement, just with four walls. And they told us, rumor had it, that it was a free house for runaway slaves.
Interesting.
Did you ever hear such
I have
a thing?
never heard that. For that particular building, I've never heard that.
Albany was in general, so it's not a far out idea. Because Albany had, even though we're ways out from
Albany. Yeah.
I'm just saying the whole New York is a slave state. You have Pennsylvania below us and south of us.
Yep.
But that was really, I've heard.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. There's the Underground Railroad project in Albany.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'd have to get a hold of them. Yeah, and maybe they would be able to tell us if they know anything about that.
Passage for, I don't know how, the Adams family, 1836.
1836, so it was fading out by then.
1840s, 1850s.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because a lot of people aren't aware that that slavery was alive and well in the town of Bethlehem. Yeah, in the very early beginning days in the 1700s.
Well, I never heard of that.
Yeah, so the town archive there's a book, there's all the old records. So we have the town minutes from 1794, which is our very first town board meeting, and our first supervisor was Philip Van Rensselaer. No, that's not right. Yeah, Philip Van Rensselaer, sorry. Was
the same person to Rensselaer County?
It's connected. He's part of the Van Rensselaer family. He lived in Cherry Hill, historic Cherry Hill, which was in the town of Bethlehem at the time, and he was our first supervisor. So we have these old records. And in amongst those old records is a book called, we kind of tend to refer to it as the Book of Slaves. And after New York passed its Gradual Emancipation Act in 1799, I want to say it is.
It was New York State.
New York State, yeah. You had to record in a book. Every town had to have a book where they recorded where slaves were manumitted and set free, so they had signed off on that, and then where slaves were born. So it's really fascinating records that go from about 1799, I think it's to 1839 in there.
I don't like that. I never heard that, because I guess they don't want to use whitewashed their history.
Yeah, it makes you uncomfortable to think about, in our nice town there were slaves here, but it was a reality, it really was a reality.
You got to get the truth out. That's what a historian is.
And to read, to read in the book, to have the names, this is Dinah, and she was manumitted and set free by, say John Slingerland or someone like that.
When did New York State abolish slavery?
New York State...
With Lincoln Emancipation?
No, it was much before that. They did a gradual emancipation. I've done some reading, about it. I think it was 1799 when they passed the act of the gradual, freeing of the slaves. And I believe it was if you were born after, say, July 1st, 1799, you were free, but you still had to serve an indenture. So you were still, had to be an indentured servant, basically, until you were, I think it was like 30, something like that. But yeah, it was supposed to be a gradual process. Fascinating reading. It's really good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You don't really hear about that for...
No, not too often.
Always the South had slaves. You always hear that, and nothing about New York.
Yeah. So there's some good information out there about slavery, and they're doing some more research just recently. I know there's a New York State archaeologist, Michael Lucas, who's doing work, about what slavery was like here in Albany County. So it's fascinating.
Was it that mean, or was it a different level? Because they say in the South there was these horror stories. They beat up, the slaves.
They were slaves. They were enslaved. They were not free. That's horrible enough. That's horrible enough for me.
Jewish view. I mean, I'm just saying in a Jewish way, there is slavery in the Bible, and I always get these questions, but just make a long story short, it's not the issue now. But, Judaism says you got to treat your slave with respect also. I mean, that you don't beat them up and things like that.
I think that's an individual thing for whoever the owners were. I really can't speak to that, but...
Be interesting.
But people make that argument, it was so horrible down in the South, but up here in the North,
we're so free.
We're so free, and it's like, well, no, they're still slaves. They're not free. That's not.
It's very interesting, and they really, I think, like to hide that kind of history. Yeah. It's good that you're here to open it up. I'm learning so much over here.
And I do have an article in my book about, that kind of dips into slavery. Yeah, in Bethlehem. Yeah.
It's interesting over here.
It's fascinating.
So, but truth is, we are in the Jewish view. The Jewish people really weren't a major part of the history
of the town of Bethlehem. Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, really not. There is an old Jewish cemetery. I don't know if you're aware of it on is it Retreat House Road? I think it's Beth Emmet, and I don't know too much about the history of how that cemetery ended up there.
Yes, that would be an interesting.
I so something to do some more research on.
People have told me that, and it's very interesting about cemeteries because in Europe, obviously there were big Jewish communities.
Right.
Obviously there were big cemeteries, and obviously we know the Holocaust happened, so the cemeteries are in wasteland. Things grow. Even though your backyard,
they get overgrown.
Don't deal with it. So there is a few people in Albany that takes teenagers to help and restore the cemeteries in Europe, and we said, well,
they
if
need to
do
come
something,
here.
Yeah, I know. Like you're local, where you're about Europe, which is fine. It's a nice mitzvah. You say it's a good deed, obviously, but hey, locally, we were just telling that there's something.
And it needs some help.
Also.
Yeah, that little cemetery.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I don't know why they came to Delmar also.
I don't know why they came to Bethlehem. Yeah. I don't know why.
Because now they're in Loudonville, I know, and it's a very nice cemetery. And they didn't keep it up either.
Yeah, and I suspect somebody owned the land, and maybe they donated it or something. I don't know. Yeah, something.
Why they came to a non-Jewish place like Delmar.
Well, they're not really in. It's not really in Delmar.
Really?
Yeah, it's more towards Glenmont. Right. Corning Hill area. Yeah. So that's not really Delmar.
So they kept it outside the city. But it's a very interesting thing because, of course, I live on Ellesmere. And Ellesmere and Kenwood, there's a major cemetery.
Yeah.
And usually, that was, it's always funny because I would say, now it's in the middle of the city, but, you have to think, hey, in the olden times.
Yeah, that was rural. That was, more rural.
In the boonies, and here we're right in the middle of everything.
Exactly.
And this is old Albany. Old
and it didn't, like when Nathanial Adams came out here, there was like maybe one or two houses in what we think of now as Delmar, one or two farmhouses, and that's it, So,
you talk about that, I have another thing to ask you, because I go to the Albany, I like art too, history, and I go to the Albany Albany, and they have a picture, and I would like to show the audience, but it says this is around Kenwood Avenue, and it's a creek.
Okay.
You know, and they have it, so it's obviously a very nice art. Yeah. And they have a whole thing, but they don't really say exactly where it is. I says, I think that's the creek behind my house. But
I don't know if it's the creek behind your house.
Right,
It's probably,
you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know this specific picture, but I know Kenwood was where, you know, it's the Normanskill. It's probably the creek in the picture.
It wasn't too big. I mean, it's not like the real creek when you go on Delaware Avenue. Maybe?
I don't know.
All right.
But if it specifically says Kenwood, there was a hamlet or an area down on kind of where Pearl Street is near the Normanskill, and down in that area, down in Pearl Street, and the roads have changed a lot there. River Road and Pearl Street, and where they all came together, Kenwood was actually like a hamlet in that area. Yeah.
Well, this way I had a whole story over here.
A whole story about Kenwood.
Someone doing about my backyard, but all right, I guess.
I kind of, and there was a big mill there that burned down, and Kenwood Mills was there, and but it's all changed. It's really different now. If you have you been on the rail trail, and if you start on the Pearl Street end and come back up?
I would start in the Delmars.
Yeah, but if you, whichever end you start, go all the way down. It's really fascinating down there. There's a little row of old houses on Old Pearl Street, I think. It's fascinating.
And you see that? Well, they're extending it further. I mean,
yes,
how far will they extend it?
It can only go as far as Voorheesville, because the line becomes active after that.
Really?
Yeah. It would not be safe to go out beyond there. Yeah, because the railroad lines come together and it becomes an active line out there.
Well, I guess
sorry. Yeah, you can't go much further.
Is there anything more you want to say about our house, our beautiful Bethlehem Chabad? So proud of it.
You should be proud of it. It is a landmark.
Historian, I want a whole story here, because it's so beautiful.
It's a landmark.
And I feel like oozing out of the walls the history. I mean, I love history.
Yeah, it is definitely a landmark for Delmar, and a tribute to Nathaniel Adams, and I always don't forget Regina, his wife, who came out with him, and it's a great spot.
Well, we're carrying on the legacy of great people over here.
Exactly.
So I want to say, Susan, thank you very much. Again, you have 2 books.
Anybody
who wants even though our show was very, very educational, I'm sure to me and to all our viewers, but if you want to pick it up, then any of the local bookstores the
local bookstores, town hall, online.
Listen, if you're living in the city, I would feel, hey, you're part of it. You're part of the living history. You're part of the town. It's not like you're a little European history or Asian history. Hey, this is your history.
And one plug, I love local history. I mean, that's what keeps me going, because Bethlehem connects with every big major theme. Like this year is 2017 is the 100th anniversary of when the United States went into World War I.
Right. Yeah.
And there's some fascinating World War I era stories that connect right to Bethlehem.
Really? How do you like that? Well, that's for another time.
That's
over
another
here.
time.
Another time.
Yes.
So thank you very much, and I found it very enlightening and educational, and thank you for being on the Jewish.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.